Hello friends, my name is Real Emile and welcome back to the Forza Motorsport Top Gear Laps. Today we are doing Superminis. Now, Superminis are different to hatchbacks in the sense they're a bit smaller and a bit less powerful. I basically went off for the Forza 5 laps. I've counted what they class as Superminis within the Supermini Championship. And in Forza 4 I basically went off what I personally would class as a Supermini. These cars are actually pretty fun. A few examples of them are, for example, this Fiat 500 Abarth that you're seeing on your screen now. Very tiny little cars with little tiny engines with big turbos on them. Huge amount of fun, and they're pretty good to drive, I have to say, for the most part anyway. You can experience some understeer obviously in these cars because, of course, it's a lot smaller than the standard car, but they're usually pretty good. Our first car was the Fiat 500 Abarth. I actually really do quite like this car an awful lot. This is probably my favourite Supermini. In fact, one of my favourite cars ever, I think. I really do like this little thing. And to drive, it's pretty good. It's certainly not the best driving car. There's quite a bit of lift-off oversteer in this vehicle. There's also a teeny bit of understeer. However, that does make it... It's a fun car, this, to drive. It's definitely fun. Round here, it was pretty planted, I do have to say. Some of the cars really did understeer off there, but this one held it round. I was pretty much on full throttle that entire way round as well, which made it even more spectacular. Into here, you can brake fairly late in these vehicles, obviously because they haven't got as much speed as, say, a supercar. You can be fairly late on the brakes, and it doesn't cause too much of an issue. Now, one problem that I did find with these cars on Forza 5, not particularly this Fiat, but some of the later ones, they do have a tendency when you turn, it feels like the differential isn't properly set up, and the car will rev the nuts off it when it's just going around a corner, and it doesn't feel like it should do that. Yeah, through there I got a bit of a hair-raising oversteering moment in the Fiat, but nothing that's unhandled. Nothing that you can't handle, sorry. It's a pretty controlled car, this, and yeah, nice to drive. Fun as well. It's very cheap as well, only 22,000 credits. Now, the complete opposite of cheap, we have the Citroen DS3 Racing. On paper, this is the fastest car here today, I believe. This has about 203 horsepower, and it's fairly light as well. This costs 37,000 credits though, which is ridiculous. That's the most expensive car here today. Yeah, and this has the differential issue. This really badly has it. You stick this into a corner and it starts redlining like mad. You might even be able to hear it on the actual recording. Not a good car to drive this. It's fairly understeery as well. However, it's good handling. Yeah, it's pretty good handling car in and of itself. It's just the differential problem does mess up a bit. If it wasn't for that problem, this car would be, in my opinion, a bit quicker and probably actually a fairly viable choice, but it's just the pricing on it as well. I'm not a particular huge fan of the DS3, to be honest. I don't think it's that good looking. I don't know, I have a bit of an issue with it. But through the hammerhead it was okay. You do have to let off on all these cars, I believe. You have to brake, I don't think you have to brake, you have to lift off, I believe, through the hammerhead. But on Forza 4, obviously, you can usually take the hammerhead flat out. Some of these cars might even be taking the hammerhead flat out. I don't actually remember. The Forza 5 laps on this were recorded quite a bit ago, so, you know. And our final car for Forza 5, at least, is the Ford Fiesta ST, a car I actually really, really do quite like. Yeah, this is a fantastic car to drive, actually. This is really, really good. PI-wise, I believe this is slightly higher than the Fiat, only just. It's the same price as the Fiat, 22,000 credits. And if we're going completely cost-effective here, this is worth every penny, pretty much. This is a better car than the Fiat, technically. This pretty much handled spot on. It did have again, it had the diff issue a little bit, but not, so much that it was unbearable. A lot nicer to drive than the Citroen, probably nicer to drive than the Fiat overall. Power-wise, I believe this is running about 212 horsepower. This is the American ST, not the European ST, which runs 197 brake, I believe, in the European one. This particular model runs 213. However, of course, it's a 5-door in the States, which means it's a little bit heavier than the other two cars here, but not by much. It does get some serious speed through the hammerhead, though. It's a quick-ish car for its class and whatnot. This is a quick car. I was actually tempted to run these against classic American muscle cars in sort of the first draft of this sort of episode, but it didn't really work out properly. Anyway, we're on to Forza 4 now, and we start with the Volkswagen Polo GTI. This is the Mark V. So, in fact, being an owner of a Mark III Polo in real life, I was interested to see this car do well. I do quite like the Mark V Polo. Probably my second favourite. The Mark III is, in my opinion, better. However, I do quite like this Mark V as well. Power-wise, I believe this is running around 157 horsepower. It's either 157 or 197. I don't actually remember. I really should do my research before these. But either way, this was absolutely fantastic to drive. I haven't driven much of the Polo on this game, but it was pretty spot on. I believe I've driven a few racing versions and they've been okay. There was a bit of understeer through there. I don't know, I think I was in a higher gear on Forza 4. I usually drop it down to first on 5 for that, but on these I decided to leave it in second, I believe. No braking through the hammerhead needed. It felt like it could take it flat out, and indeed it did. And again, through the tyres, this was a very, very quick car as well. Maybe not quite as quick as the Fiesta ST or the DS3 Racing, obviously, because they have a bit more power. But the Polo was planted. Nice car to drive, Polo. Would highly recommend it. I believe it's a DLC car, but I believe it's free DLC, so not too much of an issue there. Next up, we've got the Renault Twingo, which seems to get a really slow launch. Anyway, the Renault Twingo, another car I do quite like. This is kind of more on par with the Fiat Abarth. This has about 133 brake horsepower, weighs about the same as the Abarth. They're pretty much similar in real life. The biggest defining factor on these two is the Twingo is a bit cheaper and a bit less powerful. But I believe the Twingo had less of a waiting list as well, so that was a good thing. I sort of remembering this from the Top Gear episode where they reviewed this in Belfast. Very funny episode. I do highly recommend you go and see their road test of the Twingo if you haven't, which I'm sure you probably have if you're watching this channel. Anyway, the Twingo is obviously quite a bit slower than the other vehicles we've had today. I believe this is only just in D class in Forza 4. However, it was relatively nice to drive, yeah. I didn't have any problems with the Twingo. The lack of speed is a bit of an issue, as you can see down here. Sort of, the Polo looked extremely quick compared to this, but this looked extremely tidy, I guess. So, you know, you got to break some eggs to make some omelettes, but the Twingo wasn't great. I believe this car's very light, though. This might be the lightest car here today. It does dive a bit under braking as well. But yeah, the Twingo, not a bad car, but it could do with a bit more power. Maybe 20 more horsepower in that thing would be pretty good. And our final car today is the Peugeot 207 RC. I believe this is the GTI in the UK, I'm not too sure. Anyway, this car has a 172 brake horsepower and 172 pounds-feet of torque. And it's fairly nondescript to drive. Other than a bit of understeer, this drives like you'd expect it to, really. It's a bit boring, to be perfectly honest with you. But I do quite like the 207. I decided to use it over the 206 just because I think this car's better than the 206. I'm not a huge fan of the Peugeot 206. However, interestingly, the 206 actually does have a bit more power but a lot less torque, which is interesting. I'm not too sure if the modern day 308 GTI shares the engine from this. It may do. However, the Peugeot, I believe this is top of D class, so it's a pretty good on the PI form. I believe the highest PI car here today is the Polo, which is a C-Class car, or very barely a C-Class car. But yeah, the Peugeot wasn't too bad. It wasn't too good, it wasn't too bad. There was no real features on it. Straight line speed was pretty good in the Peugeot. It did a lot better than I was expecting it to, actually. I was expecting this car to sort of lumber around. I know that it's quite heavy in real life, but yeah, the 207 wasn't too bad. Anyway, on to the lap times, and the Ford Fiesta ST is the winner of today with a 132.12, which isn't bad at all. That's really, really good for the Fiesta. It's only 1.5 seconds slower than an Astra VXR, which is pretty good. The Polo GTI finds itself in 40th with the 132.028, fractionally slower than the Fiesta. The Polo was extremely nice car though, really good. The Citroen DS3 Racing, a 132.136. If it didn't have that diff problem, I have no doubt that car could have been seriously quick, as in, might even be rivaling the VXR Astra. The Peugeot 207 got a 132.417. Pretty fast time from the Peugeot, actually. I was quite surprised. The Peugeot, I believe, is the cheapest car here today as well. It only costs about 15,000 credits, I think. Very cheap car. In 43rd, we find the Fiat 500 at Bath, 133.173. Not very quick for the Fiat, but to say it was down on power, you know, it did a pretty respectable lap time, I think. And finally, 44th, the Renault Twingo Cup, a 134.409. Yeah, the Twingo kind of came to battle unprepared, but don't worry, as it won't sit at the bottom of the leaderboard for long, as I'm thinking throwing the Toyota Aygo Citroen C1 and a bunch of other city cars around next week. So if you want to see that, then join us next week. It might also be executive sedans, I haven't chose yet. Anyway, until next time, farewell.